Hello and welcome to another off-season Outlook episode of the Father and Son Pastime Podcast. I'm Patrick.
I'm Kevin. How are you?
That's my dad. Dad, we are now lined up to go 6 straight, unlike the Astros repeating, unlike any team in my generation repeating for 6 straight championships. But we're doing the off-season Outlook series of every MLB division, so the Central, East, West of both leagues. We're going to start, obviously, a little biased here on the East Coast. We're going to start with the AL East. And move throughout the country. But we're going to kind of tackle in this episode, Dad, in each of these 6 episodes, the losses each of these teams face, the needs that they need to do over the offseason. That doesn't always mean need to be a competitor. It could be need to shed payroll, need to get a better GM or a better coach, those kind of changes, internal changes, and also trade sort of possibilities or predictions. We're going to layer in each of those teams. We're going to start with the Orioles because they did finish first in the East. It won't always follow that mold of like by standings order, but I did want to start with the Orioles first because I think they could have a very interesting offseason.
If they want to spend a little bit of money.
If they want to have an interesting offseason, yes.
Yes.
Dad, I know I'll be covering most of the losses as we go through each of these teams. Nothing major, I think is fair to say with the Orioles. Gibson is probably the biggest loss contract-wise. Not having Felix Bautista all year next year due to Tommy John is probably feels like the bigger significant loss or the hole they need to replace on their team. They also obviously lost Jack Flaherty, midseason acquisition. Same with Aaron Hicks. They had Jorge Lopez again for like a month. That Fujinami guy, not much of an addition. But Adam Frazier, good clubhouse guy, good middle infield depth.
Had a good season, by the way.
Yeah, he did. They lost all those guys again. Gibson had the most wins on the team. Bautista being injured. Everyone else kind of was either a role player or a midseason acquisition. So kind of, Dad, walk us through what they need and if you think obviously they'll be competitive next year.
Biggest need is a closer.
Mm-hmm.
Next year, I don't know, if Cano can do that next year. I think he's better as a setup guy. So they definitely need a closer. What they do have is a surplus of infielders. They could probably, if they're going to get into trades and all that stuff, I'm thinking 1 or 2 of the infielders probably can go because they have, Holiday coming up, and they think he has a chance to be, on the opening day roster. And then that's at shortstop, and then they have 3 shortstops. So right now, I think a package for some, and then they could use more relief pitching as well. So I'm thinking the bullpen should be their biggest examination of their needs, and they need, I think, in my opinion, at least 2 veteran starting pitchers.
I'm with you on the 2 veteran starting pitchers. I would say the bigger needs is pitching, but specifically playoff experience is what this team needs.
Yeah,
they should address the closer, in my opinion, with a 1-year Kimbrel deal. We've talked about that in our top 50 free agent predictions. I said Eduardo Rodriguez to the Orioles. I forget who you said was any of the free agents predictions that you had going to the Orioles.
I had a couple of the pitchers.
What? My dad looks at those.
Lucas was one.
Oh, you have Giolito. Okay.
Yeah. And then I'm thinking it was Kimbrel, and I didn't have a whole lot of other folks going to the Orioles.
Okay.
But I did have that as, one and done kind of symbolism for the Orioles coming back, and I think it was Kimbrel, and that's about the only ones I thought. The rest can come from trades.
I aimed higher with Erod, but I also have some trade candidates as well. I said decide on Jorge Mateo and outfield surplus, and I think that's a very good trade package.
I think the one they want to get rid of, Cowser could bring back a package, and then I think they got 2 or 3 guys on minor leagues that are very good outfielders. The outfielders are a little bit jammed up too, so I think they have strength. I mean, they are continually ranked in the top 10 of the minor leagues. They have a great minor league system.
I think the Orioles line up really well to get Corbin Burns. That is my Burns and Erod are my 1, 2. John Means is suddenly their 3. I think when we get to the NL Central, I think the Brewers will completely tear it down there to get rid of Woodruff. I think they'll trade Burns and Adames as well. I think they really go bare bones. I don't know if that's going to be a full rebuild or like a half rebuild type of thing, kind of like what the Rays do when they trade off a couple people. That never feels like tanking as per the Royals or the Athletics, but it does feel like rebuilding. I looked at a couple Burns packages to get Corbin away from Milwaukee. He only has 1 year left. Definitely discontent with Milwaukee. We saw the arbitration case last year. They blamed him for not doing well in the playoffs, and it was like the reason they got to the playoffs.
Yeah, phenomenal ERA.
So if Adames is moved, it won't be to the Orioles. They're set with infielders, but they'll need a shortstop to play a year. That could be Jorge Mateo.
Mm-hmm.
They have a very interesting situation with Kobe Mayo coming up, and I actually think Ryan Mountcastle could be moved to Milwaukee, who kind of needs a first baseman or DH.
Yeah.
Right now they have Jack Bowers. Again, don't know if he's more of a platoon guy or a starter. I think that could be. I think the Orioles would keep Mayo in that situation, and trade Mountcastle and let Mayo be the first baseman next year.
Wow.
They do have some infielders. Second base is a guy named Bryce Turang with Milwaukee. Hasn't really clicked yet. The Orioles have several infielders they could. I mean, if it's not Mateo, maybe it's Urias, or it's one of their up and coming rookies. I think there is outfield surplus if they want to impact starter. It's Santander, but again, I think the Brewers are cutting payroll and they might end up wanting a Kerstead or a Cowser,
Stowers,
Kyle Stowers as well. So I mean, there's a couple options for the Orioles. I think they line up really well. It's just if they can pull the trigger, but it doesn't seem to be that Milwaukee is competing. I think that is the general sense of the league. But I thought Burns and Erod could be a really good playoff experience team.
one right-hander, one left-hander
for the Orioles next year. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to do it because of the Orioles.
But yeah, that's great thoughts. You're talking like a 4-for-1 deal. I think that could work.
Yeah, or depending on the level of the return of the prospects, 3-for-1.
Yeah. Good thoughts.
I think Burns should get moved. I think this is a good time to package up. I looked at the needs of Mets, and they basically said controllable infielders or controllable outfielders, and the Orioles have that. So they line up pretty well there.
Yeah, and there's some roadblocks for those guys in AAA that just can't get to the bigs.
The Orioles really should lean on and accept that just because they developed an amazing future doesn't mean every single one of those guys can play. They have to be willing to trade some of those players to just kind of how they got Flaherty. They had to get rid of that 12th, 13th ranked infielder, Preto.
He was a good shortstop.
Yeah. But the Orioles have shortstops and infielders. So they have to kind of be knowledgeable about who goes.
Won't hurt the overall system to clean out 3 of the top 10 because they have another class coming right up.
I think they should keep Jordan Westberg. He seems to be a pretty good second baseman of the future. I don't know if that's what the Brewers would want, but I just think that they should continue to have negotiations and not just have a quick conversation and say, no, we're not giving up Westberg. We're not giving up whoever.
Have an open mind.
Yeah, I think they got to have an open mind. But I think the Orioles do compete next year, and I say they're back in the playoffs.
Yeah, especially if they add pitching and a closer.
Yeah.
I think that's the keys.
Yeah. Dad, I know I'm going to move out of order standings-wise, but I'm going to move to the Red Sox next, who, again, had one of the best offenses in baseball last year, one of the worst pitching, one of the worst bullpens. So pretty easy to see their needs. But they lost Justin Turner, 1-year DH contract. Adam Duvall had a injury-ridden year. He's gone. They took a flyer on Alberto Mondesi. That didn't pan out. They took a 2-year pact with James Paxton when he was injured. It was okay. They already traded away Luis Arias, who they acquired mid-season. Christian Aurora's finally gone. Corey Kluber, Joel Rodriguez, they're also departing from Boston. They are not shipping up to Boston. They're shipping away from Boston.
Exporting.
Importer-exporter. Dad, what are the needs of Boston?
Sounds to me like pitching. And it sounds like offensively it might be okay, but I'm thinking there's a big opening for 2 starting pitchers. I mean, maybe more, and bullpen.
Agreed. My main note is called solidify the rotation. On paper, it's Sale, Bayo, Pivetta, Houck, and Crawford. A lot of ceilings with those guys, but a lot of low floors. and definitely some injury history. I think the Red Sox are linked to some top names free agent wise. You had Snell going to Boston. I had Yamamoto going to Boston, so really big names, impact pitchers. New GM that used to be a pitcher, Craig Breslow, will focus on the bullpen, will focus on the rotation.
And a bright mind in baseball.
For sure.
Yeah. And he used to play for the Red Sox.
Yes. I think in a weird world, I think a starting pitcher is actually going to be available in a trade, and I'll tell you why in a second. Because I think they will kind of almost revamp the rotation through trades and free agency. They will need to add a DH and a second baseman. Those are clear holes after they let Arroyo go and traded Urias. It's Devers, Story, Blank, and Tristan Casas in the infield. We talked about Mitch Garver being that catcher DH option. I think that's really important. I think Alex Verdugo is traded. There's a lot of talk coming out of Boston. A lot of Boston writers believe there's bad blood between him and Cora, bad blood between him and the clubhouse. And again, I think Verdugo is just a matter of who, or I guess maybe just a matter of when. I have a couple teams that could use him. Cincinnati could use him and like to solidify their outfield.
That'd be a great addition.
Toronto could use him. Houston could use him if they end up don't getting some of my thoughts. They could put him in left, and Seattle could use him in right if they trade some of their surplus of pitching.
Yeah, he's a nice steady outfielder.
I think in most of those packages, the Red Sox probably would have to add a few things, honestly, to move Verdugo. He's only 1 year left. I like to Houston or Seattle the most for those, and they would bring back starting pitching. However, my fun trade for the offseason is Nick Pivetta for Jonathan India of the Cincinnati Reds.
Wow.
India has lost his home in Cincinnati. They have so much other youth that can play multiple positions. Matt McClain, for example. Ellie De La Cruz, Novi Marte. They've pushed India out. And Jonathan India with that hair in Boston is just it just feels right. They need pitching. Pavetta's controllable for a couple more years. I think that makes sense. I don't care if it's Tanner Houck. But one of those two guys, I think, gets flipped for a second baseman. And I think that's Jonathan India this offseason.
He was Rookie of the Year 2 years ago. So that tells you something.
Yeah. He has
a little speed, too.
Yeah. I think, Bobby Dahlbeck, I'm going to push him. Bobby Dahlbeck can be in part of any trade, just to get him out of the organization. But yeah, I like possibly getting like a Wu from the Mariners for Verdugo.
Who?
Wu. Or JP France from the Astros, which again, I know he didn't have a great final game with the Astros and the Rangers. But maybe that's enough for the Astros to move him. Who knows? He's a 28-year-old like rookie starter. And with having a full season of Verlander, it may push France out of the rotation because obviously Hunter Brown, they're bigger on. So that's an option, but
that's
I think
a great trade idea. Really good trade. Yeah. I think that would help their infield tremendously. Defense has never been huge in Boston, so that would help.
I believe Verdugo speaks Spanish too, so Houston does add maybe a little bit there too. But I think he's gone.
And the key part of the Mookie trade.
Yes, and maybe that's the way of a full reset, that nobody from the Mookie trade will still be in Boston after the Heim debacle. But yeah, I think an active offseason. I think the Red Sox will be more active than the Orioles. I don't know if next year is a competitive year for Boston. It almost feels like not a full rebuild, but let's learn who we are as a team type of thing. A lot of people in their first or second year in Boston, Yoshida, possibly Yamamoto. I also think Brandon Woodruff gets signed by the Red Sox, and again, to compete in 2025 as he recovers.
Yeah.
Also, looks like a guy from Boston.
Stocky with a beard.
If you really look, if you get India, then you have Casas, India, Story, and Devers locked up for multiple years more.
Yeah.
You get a pitcher locked in for a nice contract. You've signed Mitch Garver. You got Jaron Duran. You got Yoshida. I mean, you have a pretty solid core that you don't have to work too hard on next offseason. Make a couple small moves, kind of like the Astros do. Tool in the right spots, but I think the Red Sox will be competitive in 2025. Not so much in 2024.
and their farm system is rising. So they've drafted well, and they got a really good catcher coming up in the near future.
Even more reason to go as a DH.
So yeah, I think the Red Sox, if they spend wisely, and I think coming out of the Cubs system, the new GM is going to build that farm system so they can keep as an influx of new talent going to the majors. So that's been successful for the Cubs.
Tampa Bay's our next team. I'm wearing a Rays shirt. I hate this organization. It's actually not the worst ballpark. And they're, in my opinion, shambles. I really do believe this organization's in shambles because of Wander Franco. If you told me beginning of 2023, the Rays are going to have this offensive explosion where multiple people are going to hit home runs. There's going to be crazy amount of power throughout the lineup. Yandy Diaz will become one of the best first basemen in the game. They'll have two different lows on the same team, but they're not related to each other. But your shortstop towards the end of the year is going to get accused of underage sex or statutory rape by multiple people in his home country and just
Despair.
be gone from baseball. I mean, they're removing things and banners from the park and all that stuff. I'm going to obviously let you address the needs. That's the biggest question mark of the offseason. They didn't lose all that much. They lost depth to basically what would equate to minor league invites. They got rid of Christian Bethancourt to, I believe, the Cleveland Guardians. Tapia was kind of like a mid-season addition to the outfield. Cole Sussler was a relief pitcher that's already been picked up on a minor league contract. Chris Davinsky used to be big with the Astros, wasn't that big with Tampa. And Jake Diekman, I don't recall having a good year with Tampa. So they didn't lose much outside of Wander. They have some questions to address with Wander and also their payroll. Dad?
I'm thinking the big trade chip is Glasnow.
It is.
And you read that people are lining up for him.
Wouldn't you be?
Yeah, and I'm thinking now they, a year or half a year from, I think, Tommy John recovery and everything else. And when he was sound, he was very good. So I'm thinking that may bring a lot of reinforcements to Tampa Bay. And you know what? They're not going to be able to afford him a year from now anyhow. So I'd trade him now, get 4 prospects, and build from there. He would look good as a number 1 starter for a lot of teams.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be in the Glasnow discussions that want to be competitive because a full healthy season of Glasnow is an ace level pitcher, and if he gets injured, that's the risk you take. They probably will be looking for a shortstop. Their Taylor Walls, I believe his name is, that was the backup to Wander, has like a hip issue going on right now. I don't know if he's going to be fully healthy for a full year, especially without a Wander.
A defense first shortstop.
Sure. Yeah. And also Tampa will just know your farm system and will just know how to pick apart. If you're St. Louis, you go, please don't trade with us. You've picked us apart enough.
Yeah.
I think Manny Margot is also gone from this team. There doesn't seem to be a need for him anymore. It feels like a Brett Phillips situation where they're like, you're a 4th outfielder. Yeah. We don't really need a 4th outfielder because we're the Rays.
They had high hopes for him when he was with Boston.
Yeah. I have Glasnow going to the Braves in this crazy we want to win it all Braves.
Wow.
I'm Braves 2024, Dodgers 2025. Do you remember Ian Anderson for the Braves?
I do.
I think he is part of that package, not the centerpiece, but I think the Rays can fix him and turn him back into that big game winner that he once was. Braves have a lot of pitchers in their top of their prospect list. If you're also the Braves, and if I think you're going to sign Sonny Gray, and you might try to sign more players than that, you're kind of okay with losing a couple of these top pitchers. I know they got a guy with a hyphenated last name that's like the number 1 prospect right now, Shaver Smith Shaver, one of those. No, I'm serious. That's his name.
Yeah, but you had it right either way.
Either way, yeah. I don't know. I think that lines up, and also if you are, for example, the Reds and you're getting Glasnow, you're putting a lot of hope that he's healthy all year. If you get 2/3 of the year of Glasnow before he gets hurt again, well, you're the Braves. You have depth. So I think it might make sense to go to a pitching-rich team already and be a 2 or 3 starter.
But one of the things you always want to look at is Tampa Bay always likes to get prospects and then build from there. Yeah. You kind of look at who has the greatest farm system and everything else. there's a lot of people that match with that. So the Reds are one of the people with a really good minor league system.
Yeah.
So even the Orioles, but I don't think they're going to trade within their division.
Yeah.
But at an ace with the Orioles, he would look great.
Yeah, I think Burns line up just a little bit better. Again, knowing Tampa, they'll just pick your pocket with trades, and I think the Orioles are protective of their
They are.
prospects, and I think the Braves are not, as we've seen them deal so many people.
They don't pull the trigger.
Braves do, but not the Orioles.
Correct.
So expect trades, and I think not a lot of signings in the Tampa Bay market for free agents this offseason.
Yeah.
Dad, let's do New York. In my opinion, New York had the most losses in the East without getting to the playoffs. Just like to add that in. I know he wasn't technically, I guess, on the team by the end of the season, but Harrison Bader was a large part of the Yankees that year. Their perfect game, Domingo Germán, is off the team because of alcoholism, and
Parent had a huge problem.
huge problem. Luis Severino, former top prospect, injury risk, a lot of problems there. Peralta and their bullpen's gone. IKF, I think a lot of fans are happy that he's gone. Obviously, they got rid of Josh Donaldson midseason. Frankie Montas is gone. Albert Abreu's gone. Franchy Cordero's gone. Keenan Middleton, that White Sox pickup mid-year, is gone. And they have most of the year out to injuries to their rookie Jason Dominguez and one of their relievers, Lou Trevino. I think Scott Efros is part of that list, unless he comes back
About
earlier.
mid-season.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they have a good amount of losses either through injury or free agency, and they have some holes.
And they
money.
have some injured people. Stanton and Rizzo had a horrible year, and he went through some rehab in the offseason, try to get him back. So right now they have so many question marks, even with people that still are on the roster.
Yes.
So they have a lot of work to do.
My notes were my note was they're honestly in a bad spot because if they don't do much, they'll lose. Like they have to either do. We're gonna just balls to the walls. We are just going to, again, 90s Yankees buy a championship, go get 3-4 big names, forget the future, forget prospects. We got to go all in this, or they have to sell, and I don't think that's in the Yankee vocabulary.
No.
Like cutting Stanton. I read an article from the Yes Network that people want Stanton cut outright, pay him his money, just get him off the team. So if that's your mindset of some, your average New York fan base, that's a desperation move to cut, I don't know, $100 million left on his contract.
Did you read what Cashman said about him publicly?
Oh, yeah. I think he said something about he's always injured.
Right. He
yeah.
goes, expect him to be injured.
Yeah.
So we're not counting on him because we expect him to be injured every year. And I'm like, my God.
Yeah, I'm sure his agent didn't like that, but
Yeah.
they need left-handed hitters. We talked about that when we were looking
Short
through the
porch.
market. We both had Cody Bellinger going to center field. Dad, do you think it sounds like both of us think they're just going to buy and not sell and not cut and
They're going to go full bore to improve their team. They're going to spend a lot of money in the offseason. They don't have a lot in the minor league system anymore because they've used it already. So I'm thinking they may be they'll be in the top 3 teams that spend in the offseason.
they're going to get Juan Soto.
Whoa.
Juan Soto, Cody Bellinger, Aaron Judge in the same outfield. That's why the Red Sox won't be competitive in 2024.
Wow. That's a heck of a trade.
I don't think it's that much because he's only 1 year left before he's a free agent.
Yep.
And then he wants free agency. He wants that massive contract that the Nats said we'll give him, and then he declined that, and now he's probably wishing he changed his mind on that. It won't be astronomical. It won't be what the Padres gave up to a year and a half ago to get him.
At the trade deadline.
We know the Padres need pitching. That was a lot of your thoughts within that. I don't think they'll sign as many free agents as you do. I think they'll get like a Clark Schmidt from the Yankees. There's a guy that's Michael King. That's some options. I don't think they'll take Rodon or Cortez because it's too much money. And then they have a couple outfielders that can kind of plug and chug for San Diego while they figure financially things out there. I mean, they're borrowing money out in San Diego. Obviously, they just lost their owner, too. I mean, they're not in a good spot in San Diego.
Yeah.
But I think Soto and Cody Bellinger and Judge are enough to get the Yankees back in postseason contention. They still have a Cy Younger. They'll figure it out. They'll add to the deadline. I think those two names change direction because neither New York team made the playoffs. And
Bad records, too.
don't forget, in March, April last year, people were talking about a Subway Series again. And neither team made the playoffs.
Yeah.
With the Mets kind of openly being in the, we'll be competitive, but it's not our year.
Or look for the future.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Yankees have to seize some tickets. They have to seize some sales.
Yeah.
They have to be competitive. They have to be truly, we are going to be better. I mean, I think their ambition is first place, obviously, but I think, I don't know, with those three outfielders, you might be first place. But
And some pitching.
right, I think they'll have to sign, if they trade pitching, they're going to have to sign some innings eater in the back
Correct.
end. But
Correct.
that's not going to be an issue
Yeah.
for the Yankees. If they commit to Soto and Bellinger, what's $10 million for a starter? Seriously.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
a low price for a starter now.
I know. So
Who's their third baseman?
third baseman right now is penciled in as DJ LeMahieu. They could also
Okay.
put Peraza there or Gleyber Torres, but most likely it's DJ LeMahieu.
Okay.
They could add a third baseman, but
I thought it was musical chairs last year.
it was musical chairs last year.
Okay.
Yeah, IKF played a lot of third base.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
Donaldson, but he was just awful.
Yeah, I think he's best if he retires.
Yes, but he got put on the fake IL list. Do you know about this? And he was like running and throwing on warm-ups, and they had to get him off of warm-ups because like, you're supposed to be injured.
Yeah.
It's full of bullshit. Toronto is their last team in the East. They lost big names. They didn't lose the most quantity, but they lost the most quality, in my opinion. Matt Chapman, who they traded for. They gave up a good amount for to the lovely Blue Jays. Ryu, one of their Asian pitchers, is finally hitting the open market. Kevin Kiermaier is back on the free agent list. Brandon Belt, again, we talked about him being a nice bench piece. Jordan Hicks, Whit Merrifield, and then two relievers of Adam Simber and Matt Whistler. So quality names. 6 of those names, I think, were on our top 50 list.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously the question of Alek Manoah. Dad, go ahead. What are their needs?
Third base, definitely. Huge hole there. Don't forget he added a good bit of offense as well in his Gold Glove third baseman. Huge hole. I think, 3 years ago, this was the team that had the youngest stars coming through the system. Some of those stars have have done very, very well. Some haven't. So I think right now you have a lot of, holes that you can fill to make you a better team. Toronto never seems to get out of that second, third place scenario. What can they do to get to first place? Are they going to spend the money, or are they a trade guy? They a lot of players they have to, replace. I think it could be a mixed bag of trades and free agents. And if they're serious about overtaking the Orioles, they need a lot of work. But right now, I think they got holes everywhere, especially the bench.
Yeah, I think their best asset is the rotation, which is I'm going to encourage them to trade. Very similar to Verdugo in Boston, Alek Manoah seems straight up not happy in Toronto. He was told to go to AAA Buffalo and then didn't, and it took a month for that to be reported. He was supposed to be in Buffalo as a minor league player for 30 days, and he did nothing. He never reported the team.
Wow.
He never did workouts. He never threw.
Not good.
Just 30 days of AWOL.
He's traded.
I think he's traded. However, he's still a dominant pitcher.
Yeah, he's a big man. Yeah.
I got some birds trading with each other. I got some birds changing nest. I got Alek Manoah going and being the last pitcher the Cardinals will look for this offseason. And I got Dylan Carlson and more coming back to Toronto. Carlson and Springer are very similar. They can be center or right, and that's what they need. I think there's also an infield surplus in St. Louis. I don't know if it's going to be even or if there's going to be some, do another wealth that the Blue Jays have as some of their bullpen pitchers is like a Tim Meza coming to St. Louis and they throw in Brendan Donovan. Or they put in, I love Tommy Edman, but maybe they put in Tommy Edman who can go play third base.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's not Arenado, it's not going to be Goldschmidt, it's not going to be their Mason Wynn rookie shortstop. It's going to be someone in that, hey, where does this guy go? We have too many players.
And it makes Toronto more athletic.
It does make Toronto more athletic.
They're thinking about trading Pichette as well.
Nolan Gorman, I think, would stay in St. Louis just because his defense isn't as good. He's more of a hitter. But Blue Jays could obviously take him as a hitter. But he bats like 220 but hits 30 home runs. So depending how big that trade gets, I can see Manoah for Carlson and more. But I like how they line up, and I think it greatly benefits both teams. Because Manoah could be your ace in St. Louis all of a sudden.
If he's happy, he's a dominant pitcher. So, yeah, I mean...
Go ahead.
No, I was thinking the previous year he had a great year and was the number one starter in the playoffs.
You also have Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson and Goldschmidt and Arenado to kind of keep Manoah in check.
Gibson might be a great role model.
I will also say that the big reason that Lynn and Gibson were signed, according to the Cardinals GM, was that they're good clubhouse guys. So that would be the one argument against my thought that they don't get Manoah. But it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just if you can get over that hump.
You know, out of that, just the East, you have some big names being traded.
I do. I have a lot of names. I do think Glaber is also going to get traded. I didn't mention that earlier, but more of a salary dump because they're getting all these other players. Right. Glaber's going to go to Miami for a pitcher that either gets shipped to Soto to San Diego or to replace a pitcher on the Yankees that got traded for Soto.
Yeah, I mean, he can play, second and third. So, I mean, he used to have a little pop, too.
Well, I think Glaber and Tim Anderson are your up-the-middle combo next year for Miami. John Birdie is like a utility guy, and Luis Ariz is your DH. Jorge Soler could also be that DH option or play outfield and rotate with Arias,
Yeah, and just hope the ball's hit right at him.
Yeah, they don't have a strong outfield, so I mean...
Yeah, great thoughts.
So, Glaber's gone. I have a pitcher, whether it's Pivetta for Jonathan India. Manoah's gone. Verdugo's gone.
And what do you do if Rizzo doesn't come back? Then you're looking for a first baseman, too.
You probably get Rhys Hoskins. Yeah.
Yeah.
Juan Soto's coming to New York. Burns is coming to Baltimore. Glasnow's gone. The two, I didn't pick a place for Shane Bieber, but I thought the two that would make sense is Baltimore or Boston. So, could be another thing to the East. I do have one more. I have Brandon Drury getting traded from Los Angeles to the Toronto Blue Jays.
Wow, that makes them better.
To be the second or third baseman if they don't get one in the St. Louis trade.
Out of that division, what you just said, Toronto looks like they could be the most improved.
But yeah, they would have to listen to me, Dad. They'd have to listen to some random guy in Maryland.
Well, maybe you can make a phone call.
Yeah, who the hell do I know in Toronto?
Well, make friends.
Hey, Toronto, if you're listening, hire me as a special assistant or whatever.
Any Canadian listener.
I love the East being active. The reason I think the East is so active, and I know people are going to say it's bias, and you're there, and you're a Red Sox fan, and you live in Baltimore, it's because the AL East won 0 playoff games this year. The AL East got embarrassed. Boston and New York didn't make the playoffs for the first time, and I can't remember. Both teams not making the playoffs. The Blue Jays, the Rays, and the Orioles got straight up embarrassed. They got called the AL Least on social media and things like that. I think they're going to take that personally. The East Coast either is just like, hey, we're just busting balls, we're having a good time, we're Philly, we're Pittsburgh, we're Boston, or they take things really seriously and they get their mafia friends together and they kill you. Because that is New England and New York and Baltimore and Philly. So I think they're going to take that personally and really go all outside the Rays. 4 of them try to be somewhat competitive for the next year or two.
And don't forget, Major League Baseball would like to have Boston and New York in the playoffs for advertising sales and just for prestige and everything else. Don't forget, New York's media market is the biggest in the country, probably biggest in the world. Without having a New York team in the playoffs, hurt ratings. And Major League Baseball is all about ratings.
Yes.
So always keep that in mind. They need a New York team in there.
That's our offseason outlook. It could be one of our longest of the 6 outlook series. But thanks for listening. Again, if you're an AL East fan or you got a team in this is why you watched the episode. This is what you wanted to learn more about. A bunch of hungry teams that want to get better and that I think will use a lot of trades in order to do that. A lot of personalities are shifting this year in baseball. And either a new pasture, kind of like, it's going to be better, just a little bit of change of scenery. We'll see. It's going to click for some people, and for some trades, it's going to be completely lopsided. Alek Manoah could go 18-3, and Dylan Carlson could hit 220. Or Dylan Carlson could be a Gold Glove MVP candidate, and Alek Manoah gets released in May. Like, these are the risks I think teams are willing to take in 2024.
And don't forget, there's a lot of new GMs and a lot of new managers that want to put their mark on baseball. They're going to be looking to trade and be active just because they're new and they want to make a move to improve their team. A lot of changes have happened in baseball.
We're going to move on to our AL Central, which is something I'm personally looking forward to. So if you want to watch that episode, it should be right next to it in your queue. Again, like, subscribe to the video. I won't say all the social media stuff. It'll be in the description below. But thank you for watching, and on to the next one.